You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the Resistance. Monday, December 3rd. We're live for the next 3 hours. I'm Dean Obeidallah, hoping to be your MBFF. I'm on Twitter, where I live. I stalk people there. No, I actually don't. But I am there all the time, at Dean Obeidallah. Or you can watch the monologue, or when we have guests in studio, by going to facebook.com/Dean of Radio. Or if you really want to contact me and say things, anything, you want to share things, go to dean@deanofradio.com. Drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you had some fun, relaxed. And SNL was back. Alec Baldwin was back as Trump. Let's play a little of that to have some fun. First, here's Baldwin as Trump with Kate McKinnon as Rudy Giuliani in a funny moment from the cold open that we just saw on Saturday in SNL. Clip number 1, please.
Oh, Johnny, you've really done it this time. Because I got to face all those European leaders again. They just hate me because I'm a nationalist. I mean, what did nationalism ever do to Europe? Rudy, where did you come from?
Oh, I was hanging upside down under the balcony to get a little...
What's the latest on the Mueller probe?
Well, the good news is it's almost over.
And the bad news?
It's almost over.
And how's my legal defense coming?
Well, I'm involved, so it's not great. This might be the first time someone's lawyer pleads insanity.
God, I want to fire you, Rudy, but I can't. You know all my secrets.
Yep, and I keep those secrets where no one can find them. On nationally televised interviews.
So, and then there was a last thing I want to play here because I liked it very much, because he's at the G20 in the sketch, of course, and in real life he was as well. And it's Argentina. I'll leave it at that, and the whole cast comes out. Let's hear clip number 2.
Wow, who knows what tomorrow will bring. But for now, I guess all I can say is, don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is I'm very guilty. Some little no-nos and maybe treason. But I kept my promise. Oops, no, I didn't. Don't cry for us, Argentina.
The truth is I barely know him.
All through our wild days.
I'm not existent.
It's just a witch hunt.
And we're all witches.
They are all witches. Summed up well, my friends. And this week we might have a lot of legal stuff with Robert Mueller. We're going to, in all likelihood, get a submission from Michael Flynn. Remember Michael Flynn, National Security Advisor? It's almost nostalgic. He was the first guy to plead guilty for lying to the FBI about having a phone call with the Russians, about sanctioning. He lied all about it. And of course, now there's so much more we know. But we might get a sentencing memorandum from his lawyers this week. Later in the week, Robert Mueller's team is expected to file documents regarding Paul Manafort and why Paul Manafort should be charged with more crimes for lying to the special counsel Mueller. So a lot of legal stuff. But we've got to look at the new stuff learned later Friday and over the weekend, and certain things I think are more clear now, at least to me, and I want to share it with you. But the big question is, what else is Donald Trump hiding about his relationship with Russia? Donald Trump is like a human Russian nesting doll. Like every time you open up, we learn something more. And that's what's remarkable. Every time you learn something new, and we learned something new last week, we had not known this before. Trump had lied and concealed it. How much more is out there is the question. Because up until last week, we thought we probably knew everything. And that also shows Robert Mueller knows so much more than any of us right now. Now, as we learned from last week, for those wondering why Donald Trump refused to criticize Vladimir Putin and defend him continually during the campaign, it became clear because he was hoping to do a massive business deal with Vladimir Putin and Russia and built this Trump Tower in Moscow. That's at the very least. If there's something more compromising him, I think Robert Mueller will find that out. But what we do know, and I want to highlight a few points that I went through this weekend. Again, I talked about it Friday, but the news was breaking Friday, and we had just gotten Michael Cohen's attorney's sentencing memo, which is simply the memo that you submit to court asking the judge to sentence your client to the least amount of penalties as possible. And in that, there's a plea by the defendant through his lawyers or her lawyers. And there's some really interesting details in this. But what we know, undisputed, on October 28, 2015, Donald Trump personally signed a letter of intent to build the Moscow Trump Tower. That's undisputed. October 28, 2015 is the day Donald Trump signed it. Today I went through this letter of intent. Letter of intent is not the real way it should be framed, because I think, like most of you, and I thought too, letter of intent was like a letter saying, I have an intent to build a project in Russia, and some Russian businessman signs off and Trump signs off. No, this letter of intent was a 17-page contract with great detail. Let me share some of the detail from this 17-page contract signed October 28, 2015, but clearly negotiated over the months before that. Maybe before Donald Trump even announced his candidacy in June of 2015. Perhaps his running was to help this deal. I can't tell you. But in this 17-page detailed contract, it talks about everything from licensing fees to approval of building plans to how many rooms will be hotel rooms for rent and how many will be condos for sale, to the spa, to how many parking spaces. That might give you a sense of what we're talking about here. This was a detailed 17-page contract that clearly took, I would imagine, myself as a lawyer, I would imagine months to negotiate, at the very least weeks and weeks and weeks to negotiate back and forth. Signed October 28, 2015. By the way, the exact same day as the third GOP presidential debate. He signed that and then went on stage that night. And what we also learned last week is that Michael Cohen had testified, and others had as well, that Donald Trump stopped any talks with the Russians about a business deal at the end of January 2016. What we learned from Michael Cohen is a guilty plea. That went through June 14, 2016. For 6 more months, they were actively negotiating. So from October 28, 2015, even before that, through June 2016, they're actively negotiating with the Russians. And here's a little of Donald Trump at one of the debates, which is, we have the one from last week. Oh yeah, clip number 4, please.
As far as Syria, I like if Putin wants to go in, and I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night. But you know that. But if Putin wants to go and knock the hell out of ISIS, I am all for it 100%, and I can't understand how anybody would be against it. They blew up, hold it, they blew up, wait a minute, they blew up a Russian airplane. He cannot be in love with these people. He's going in, and we can go in, and everybody should go in.
Donald is wrong on this. He is absolutely wrong on this. We're not going to be the world's policeman, but we sure as heck better be the world's leader. There's a huge difference where without us leading, voids are filled.
All right, so there you get the sense. There's Donald Trump, and then Carly Fiorina pushes back, and he continues and continues and continues. And then that's November. In December, Donald Trump is on Morning Joe, and at the time, Joe Scarborough and Mika were friends, and Putin had just praised, people might remember this, Putin publicly praised Donald Trump during the campaign, calling him brilliant. And here's the exchange they have on Morning Joe about this. Here's clip number 5.
Do you like Vladimir Putin's comments about you?
Sure. When people call you brilliant, it's always good, especially when the person heads up Russia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also as a person that kills journalists, political opponents, and invades countries. And invades countries. Obviously, that it would be a concern, would it not?
He's running his country, and at least he's a leader, unlike what we have in this country.
Yeah, but again, he kills journalists that don't agree with him.
Well, I think our country does plenty of killing also, Joe. So, there's a lot of stupidity going on in the world right now, Joe. A lot of killing going on, a lot of stupidity, and that's the way it is.
So there's Donald Trump literally defending Vladimir Putin on national television for killing journalists. Is a business deal enough to compromise Donald Trump to do that? because I keep thinking something else is out there. Because when you hear that clip where he literally defends, in the midst of the GOP primary season, Donald Trump is defending Vladimir Putin for killing journalists. And we know he's now defending the Saudi leader because he has business deals with them as well. So maybe it's that simple. In March of 2016, Donald Trump, in an interview in the New York Times, calls for the sanctions against Russia over the Crimea, their taking of Crimea, to be rolled back. Trump said, "It didn't seem like to me anyone else cared." He said, "We're the least affected by what happens. The Ukraine's so far away. Countries closer didn't seem to care too much." So to put this in perspective right here, and this is not a crime, this is just the politics of it. You've got Donald Trump negotiating with the Russians, talking to the Russians, has a 17-page letter of intent personally signed with the Russians. He doesn't reveal that. During the GOP primaries, don't you think Republican voters were entitled to know that? Don't you think as a Republican, if you're listening, you're a Republican, or on the shoe was on the other foot, if it was a Democratic candidate defending Putin all the time, saying, let's roll back sanctions, defending Putin, who's literally killed journalists, defending him, wouldn't you want to know that that guy's got a mega $1 million, potentially $1 billion deal with Russia that Putin is involved with? Wouldn't you want to know that? Of course you would want to know that. But he concealed that. And then May 3rd, Donald Trump effectively gets the GOP nomination. May 4th, Michael Cohen and their business buddy, Felix Sater, who's Russian-born and been working with Trump for years, they're talking to the Russians about Trump maybe going to visit them. And then everything changes June 14th. And that's when the Washington Post broke the story that DNC had been hacked by the Russians. How did Donald Trump respond June 15th, the next day? Did he go, oh my God, this is horrible. The Russians have done this. I can't believe this. Was he silent? Nope. He put out a statement saying, we believe it was the DNC that did the hacking as a way to distract from the many issues facing their deeply flawed candidate. He literally again deflected any attacks on Russia, saying the DNC hacked their own emails, which now we know is a joke. It was the GRU, it was the actual Russian military. But there's Donald Trump continuing to defend Russia and Vladimir Putin. If we knew about this business deal that he'd entered into on October 28, 2015, for millions and millions of dollars, I think everyone would have asked questions like, are you defending Russia now because you got a business deal? And the American public, the GOP primary audience, and then finally the general election audience would have had a chance to assess Donald Trump and go, some would have not been troubled, but some would have. And it continues, September 2016 debate. They're talking about Russian hacking of the emails. At that time, we knew more that it was Russia was involved. And Trump says in that debate, pushing back against Hillary Clinton, saying it was Russia. He says, I mean, it could be Russia. It could also be China. It could be a lot of people. It could also be someone sitting in their bed that weighs 400 pounds. Okay, you don't know who broke into the DNC. There is Donald Trump lying. If people knew, the 77,000 Americans in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, who essentially decided this election by voting for Donald Trump, if they knew that Donald Trump was defending Russia this passionately, and also knew he had entered into a big contract with them, perhaps they would have thought differently of Donald Trump. Now, Jerry Nadler, the incoming House Judiciary Chair, was on Meet the Press Sunday and talked about this very issue and about Donald Trump being compromised by the Russians. And I got a feeling he might be saying there's something more than business dealings here. Or at least common sense is telling him something is up. So let's hear Jerry Nadler. This clip number 6 was Chuck Todd yesterday on Meet the Press.
Here's what a former federal prosecutor, Ken White, observed in The Atlantic, and I'm curious if you agree. This conclusion, at least, is inescapable. The president, who has followed this drama obsessively, knew that his personal lawyer was lying to Congress about his business activities and stood by while it happened. Do you agree with that assessment? And does that look like obstruction of justice to you?
Well, I do agree with that assessment. And, you know, we have a president who lies incessantly to the American people about big matters and small matters, who surrounds himself with people who lie incessantly to the American people. And the key fact now is that the time when he can get away with lying to the American people all the time and evading accountability is coming to an end. And I do think that this is a very serious matter. And among other things, the fact that he was lying to the American people about doing business in Russia and that the Kremlin knew he was lying, gave the Kremlin a hold over him. And one question we have now is, does the Kremlin still have holds over him because of other lies that they know about?
And that's really interesting. And to me, it's sort of like, what else is Trump hiding? The human Russian nesting doll. And I think it's interesting, Jerry Nadler, who will be House Judiciary Chair come January 3rd, is raising that because when you look at what Trump said and the way he covered for Putin, could it just be about the business deal? That's one thing. Could it be something else? We're going to find out. Because in Michael Cohen's sentencing memo that his lawyer submitted on Friday, that went public Friday, it says some really interesting things I want to share. First of all, it says Michael Cohen is cooperating with not just Mueller, not just the Southern District of New York prosecutor, but with the New York Attorney General's office in a state court action in which the New York AG has sued Trump Foundation and individuals, including Trump, over potentially criminal misuse of charity funds. So you've got Michael Cohen working on that. Then this is really amazing. In the sentencing memo, it writes that the lawyers write, beginning before the entry plea on August 21st, 2018, and continuing through late November, which is just last week, Cohen participated in 7 voluntary interviews with the special counsel's office. That's Robert Mueller, 7 of them, and says he'll make himself available for any more questions. In fact, here's Judge Napolitano today on Fox News talking about how significant that fact is. Here's clip number 8.
What matters most with him is the 70 hours he spent with the FBI.
Right. A lot of our friends and colleagues have said, well, big deal. He admitted a lie and he corrected it in the courtroom. The important thing for our analysis is not what Michael Cohen said to the federal judge last Thursday. It's what he said to the FBI in the 70 hours that they debriefed him. That is an extraordinary amount of time for them to spend with him. What is also important is the timing. Michael Cohen's guilty plea coming 5 days after President Trump submits under oath his written answers to the special prosecutor. I'm going to suggest to you there must be a contradiction between the two. The timing could not have been a coincidence.
Not a coincidence, says Judge Napolitano. Putting it all together. I've always respected him. I'm growing to respect him even more. And also in the sentencing memo, Cohen's lawyers really detail some of the other stuff that they talk about, the campaign finance violations that he pled guilty to in August. And he gives more details on it in the sentencing document, saying that this was done, we know, at the direction of Trump, but saying that he did this to pay off Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels because he wanted to stop a narrative that would adversely affect the campaign and cause personal embarrassment to Donald Trump and his family. Then regarding the lies to Congress, he goes into more detail, saying that he lied to Congress for the simple reason to dismiss and minimize the merit of the special counsel investigation because he wanted to help Donald Trump. This is all about helping Donald Trump, Michael Cohen. And the liability, the criminal liability for Donald Trump regarding the lies will come up if he told Michael Cohen to lie. The same way Michael Cohen said under oath that he told him to violate campaign finance laws. So today, Donald Trump, in a jaw-dropping tweet, called the man, Michael Cohen, a man who in 2007 became Trump's executive vice president and special counsel and fixer and consigliere and everything else. Today, Trump is finally getting the scope and the depth of what's going on here. Came back from G20, and he tweeted today something I cannot believe. He wrote, Michael Cohen has asked the judge for no prison time. You mean he can do all of the terrible, unrelated to Trump things, having to do with fraud, loans, taxes, and not serve a long prison sentence? He makes up stories to get a great and already reduced deal for himself and get his wife and father-in-law, who's got money, off scot-free. He lied for this outcome and should, in my opinion, serve a full and complete sentence. Here's Donald Trump, the man in the White House, calling for his former lawyer to go to prison for a long term. Think about that for a second. The President of the United States, air quotes, asterisk, is calling for his longtime lawyer to go to prison for a long time. That is, I can't believe that. I cannot believe in my life that I'm reading this, that anyone would write this. And clearly he didn't go through his lawyers. And then Trump does something which could be a crime. He tweets, first quotes, I will never testify against Trump, close quotes. writing, "This statement was recently made by Roger Stone, essentially stating that he will not be forced by a rogue and out-of-control prosecutor to make up lies and stories about President Trump." He put President Trump in quotes, which I think is lovely because I put in air quotes all the time. And then he adds, "Nice to know that some people will still have guts." Folks, that is witness tampering right there. That's called witness tampering. This will be marked as an exhibit in an impeachment trial or in a criminal trial of Donald Trump. And don't just take my word for it. Former Solicitor Generals and other attorneys are out there saying the exact same thing. It looks like a violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1512, which makes it a crime to knowingly try to persuade another person or to influence or delay their testimony from any official proceeding or attempt to do that. So when he's saying, "Roger Stone, you're great. It's nice to know some people still have guts," and all this kind of stuff, there's a really good argument this is witness tampering. So here are the questions. I've summed up everything because we had a long weekend, a lot of stuff going on. Where do you think this is going? Do you think there's something more than business? What else is Donald Trump keeping from the American people? He lied. Donald Trump lied. He's a liar, I know, but he lies for reasons. He lied to keep this from the American people. Is it enough, do you think, that he was simply afraid that if they found out he had a business deal, they wouldn't vote for him? Or is something more going on? He is the Russian nesting doll. Same thing with, Michael Flynn. We're going to find out later this week what's going on with Michael Flynn. And Paul Manafort. There's nothing off the table with Donald Trump. And that's what's scary to me about him. I have no idea what they have on him. I have no idea how deep this runs. I like that Jerry Nadler is talking about it very clearly, saying they might have something more. Because I think they do. It would be irresponsible for me to say what it is because I don't know what it is. I'm not going to play games. So what do you think? What do you think the Russians have on Donald Trump? Do you think it's just the business and that's all it is? And that's fine. There's no wrong answers. If you think that, I'll hear you out. If it's not, if you think it's something more, I'd love to hear your view on that because I'm stunned by, when you put this all together now, Donald Trump advocating reducing sanctions, defending Putin, killing journalists, defending Putin for attacking our elections, even through Helsinki, when he's there at the summit and the president, as president, siding with Putin over our own intelligence communities. Was that just about money or is there something else? And I don't mean the PP tape, folks. I'm talking about something bigger. I don't know what that could be. All right, 866-997-4748. Love to hear from you. 866-997-4748. You're my guest right to the top of the hour on the Dean Obey Dollar Show. If you want to talk about George H.W. Bush, happy to talk about that as well. But let's take a break, come back, and take your calls right after this. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obey Dollar Show on SiriusXM Progress.